Good evening. Welcome back to the Countdown to Ironman Lake Placid video series. My name is Joe from Endurance Mentors. And today we're going to get into the most recent Ironman wetsuit rules and just want to simplify them and hopefully get this out as kind of an FAQ. It goes along with this blog post on our site, which I'll link to in the details of this video. So first and foremost, I just wanted to come right out and try to put kind of like a one-liner out there for the vast majority of athletes. Okay, so the majority of us age group athletes are going to go into this race and we are not going to be in contention for either like podium places, awards, or championship slots. So for us, the wetsuit rules, which can seem complicated, become much easier. So ready, here it is. If you are an age group athlete not in contention for awards or championship slots, your threshold is 83.8 degrees. Anything 83.8 degrees or lower, you are 100% allowed to wear a wetsuit. It will not impact your race at all. We'll get into further details about the actual breakdown of other kind of lower thresholds for those who might be competing for championship slots. But that single statement right there, 83.8 and lower, really, I think will give a lot of athletes maybe lower their anxiety going into race day. All right. A lot of the Ironman races swim in waters that are below that level. And so a wetsuit is typically used in most races. All right. Obviously, there's some hotter climate races. Those are a little bit different. But quite frankly, if the water temperature is above 83.8, you really don't want to be wearing a wetsuit anyway. You'll just frankly cook. So the reason I wanted to put this out there is because the topic of, am I allowed to wear a wetsuit in this race is always a big conversation piece in the weeks leading up to an Ironman. Okay. We're talking here about Ironman Lake Placid. You'll see the Facebook pages just alive about this. When you go to the briefings, they'll be talking about this as well. And what I want to say is just, it makes sense to me that people get kind of nervous about it, because a wetsuit, especially in open water, is kind of like a safety blanket, quite frankly. And I think it makes perfect sense. I mean, I myself, even to this day, after years of open water swimming, feel more comfortable open water swimming in a wetsuit than just a bathing suit. And there's a lot of different factors, but I think the most common thing, most common reason why is just because we don't get a chance to practice this a lot. The vast majority of athletes, I think, train in a pool, myself included. I count myself as one of the lucky ones, but if I get out into an open water setting 6 or 7 times before the race, I consider myself kind of lucky. And the more people I speak to, maybe they got an opportunity to jump in the lake, just before or the couple days leading into the race. So it makes sense to me that people would have a lot of anxiety kind of around the wetsuit rules. A lot of us as athletes are kind of invested in wearing a wetsuit on race day. So the other thing too is that, I think about the 3 different disciplines that we train, thinking about like running, when we go out for a run, we're running independently. That's going to be very similar to the race. I think about, time trialing on a bike. Everybody watching this video right now is, either on a trainer solo by themselves, or they're out on, solo rides. As you know, especially this deep into Ironman training, you're kind of hitting very specific numbers. Those numbers are specific to you. Most people are doing less group rides at this point. It's kind of like a solo endeavor to prepare yourself for Ironman Lake Placid. So I think from a running and a biking standpoint, we're in very familiar territory. Swimming, however, for so many of us is very, very different. So we typically train in a pool. I think I'm speaking for most athletes when I say that. I typically train in a pool, local YMCA right down the road. Things that I don't get to practice often: open water swimming, or I practice infrequently, open water swimming. Then if I do get to open water swim, I'm not practicing being in a group of people that are kind of jockeying and competing for the same position in the race. That is a very, very foreign feeling for us. And The last video that we did was on, racing ahead of your Ironman. I actually think that's one of the biggest benefits to racing ahead of the Ironman is that you actually get to feel what a competitive swim feels like, because it is not apples to apples to go into your local YMCA and just, doing laps back in the pool or whatever sets that you're doing these days. So understand that the anxiety that's out there, if you're feeling this way, don't feel silly about it. It makes perfect sense. But remember that for the vast majority of us, wearing a wetsuit will be completely fine on race day as long as you're an amateur athlete and you're not competing for awards or championship slots. Okay, that's the simplified version of this for the vast majority, for the 98% of us. Now, those who are paying a little bit closer attention to, maybe I could get a top 5, maybe I could be competitive for a championship slot, the wetsuit rules do get a little more complicated. And so here's the breakdown. By the way, in this blog post that I'm attaching myself to right now, I link directly to the 2024 competition rules. They're also just right on the Ironman page, and it's section 4, has to do with wetsuits and water temperature rules, et cetera, et cetera. So you can pretty easily find this yourself. But for the sake of the video, let's go through it. All right. In an Ironman race, you are allowed to wear a wetsuit and be eligible for awards and championship allocations up to 76.1 degrees Fahrenheit. That's according to the competition rules on the Ironman website. Again, linked to in this blog post. Now, you are actually still allowed to wear a wetsuit from 76.2 up to 83.8. But in that window, you are permitted to wear one, but you won't be eligible for awards or championship slots. Okay, so if that's a point of anxiety for you, or if you're not interested in the awards or any of the slot allocations, you're certainly welcome to continue to wear a wetsuit. All right, but again, know the rules, and you do have this middle ground, which is kind of like a non-competitive. You can still go out, you can still race. Of course, you could have the best race of your life, but you're not going to be given, an award or a championship spot if you were wearing a wetsuit. And it fell between, again, 76.2 and 83.8. Okay, so it's allowed, but again, with that caveat. Anything above 83.8 degrees is a non-wetsuit swim. Okay. And if anybody out there is even watching this video in the context of a different race, anything above that temperature, you are going to be so hot in a wetsuit, you probably don't want to be wearing one anyway. So if that's a concern for you, what you can do is make sure that you kind of cherry pick races that will have a water temperature where you can, definitely wear a wetsuit. But just know that, if you were to even go to your local pool and throw a wetsuit on, oftentimes that water is about 80 degrees and you would just absolutely fry. So I think it's good to not wear a wetsuit above those temps. Last thing that I'll say is I really don't think there's anything for us to worry about going into Ironman Lake Placid, or if you're watching this in the context of a different race. I think that Ironman understands that the vast majority of age group athletes are hoping to wear a wetsuit on race day. Okay. And I think they really do everything they can to make a race wetsuit legal. Obviously, if it's too hot, it's too hot. There's nothing they can do about that. But I do think that they understand the anxiety that goes on. And quite frankly, I think wetsuits are safer anyway, because they're the buoyancy. You could almost float on your back with a wetsuit, and it's almost like a life preserver, frankly. Everyone here knows this. So I think that, you kind of heard it before, but Ironman finds a way. And I think there is some truth to that if they're kind of in that gray area in between, or maybe they take two readings and one is 76.2 and one is 76.1, I think they just go with the 76.1 because it'll be safer for the group as a whole. And also, quite frankly, they understand what their customer wants. All right. I hope you all have found this helpful. I think that, again, for the vast majority of athletes, just plan on wearing a wetsuit on race day. That's the easiest thing to do. And quite frankly, only a very, very, very small percentage of people are even going to be eligible for awards or championship slots. So I hope you find this helpful. Hope you all have a great Memorial Day weekend, and I will catch you next time.